In Minnesota, there's an older. Speaking of Minnesota,
Just saying.
there's always room on the bandwagon for you. There's an older gentleman in Minnesota that wanted to break up his garden a little bit so he could plant some potatoes. Because he was older, he couldn't do it. He had one son that was in prison, and so he wrote his son a letter explaining that whole situation. So he said, "Dear son, I'm feeling really stressed out and worried and a little anxious because I don't think I'm going to be able to break up the ground this year to plant the potatoes. It's something that your mom and I always love to do together. It's just too much work. I wish you were here, and then I know you would help." And immediately his son responds back, "Dad, for heaven's sake, do not tear up the garden. That's where I planted all the guns." Wouldn't you know it, 4:30 the next morning, about a half a dozen police officers show up with a search warrant, and they get in that garden and they start digging for 2 hours trying to find the gun, and they can't find any. So the dad, the old man, is like, "I don't know what's going on," and so he writes back, explains what happens. He says, "Son, I'm a little bit confused. They didn't find anything. What should I do next?" The son replied, "Dad, go ahead and plant the potatoes. That's the best I could do from where I am." We all have moments when we feel a little anxious, a little stressed out, a lot of pressure in our lives. And that pressure can come from self-inflicted pressure just because of the nature of life. It can come from the burdens that we carry and the stresses that we just been carrying. I have found out that, man, it doesn't matter how old you are, but there just seems to be an increase in stress and really, as a result, depression and anxiety. Whether you're a teenager, whether you are an adult, whether you're retired, married, divorced, single, I mean, it just seems to be across the board. Overall, there's a general sense of people I'm just overwhelmed. Too much. And I don't know what to do. And so we've been talking about, let's just focus on simplifying. Let's focus on really thinking about what matters the most. And often, let me just help you a little bit. One of the biggest, and it's going to sound crazy, one of the biggest stressors that I have found across the board is people's phones. Can I just encourage you? I mean, it is a great tool to check in. You reach a lot of people, but make sure you've got seasons where you're putting it down regularly. I mean, I'm just telling you, especially young people. I've seen more stress and worry and anxiety come from people, social media searching and finding what else is doing. It can become crazy. So let it be a tool, not a burden. That's just a free one. That's not even in my message. That's just free. The fact is God didn't design us to live a real stressed out life. We know that in John 10:10 it says, "I have come that you might have life to the fullest." Like, that means exuberant life. How many are living a life absolutely full, exuberant, fulfilled life? Woo! If that's the kind of life that God wants us to live. The problem is stress gets in the way, the pressures that we deal with getting in the way, and so we have to learn to simplify, to break it down. I want to suggest to you just two things that you could focus on instead of all the hundreds of other things around you, just two that you can focus on. Last week we brought these up. The context of what's happening is the Israelites grew up in a culture that there was filled with laws and more commands and rituals, and they were just busy trying to please God and do what everyone else wanted them to do, and it was just a crazy, busy type life. And so they're trying to corner Jesus, and they're trying to get him to say, hey, what's the best one? What command should we follow? Jesus, Mr. Smart Guy, right? And so Jesus essentially says this. Not essentially, he does say it. He says, you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, your soul, and your mind. Yeah, love the Lord with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. This is the greatest commandment. And second, equally, love your neighbor as yourself. And so, let me encourage you, if you have notes, and you do, because I put them in your bulletin, write this down. Simplify. Simplify, love God, love people. I want to encourage you, and we're going to stay here for a while, because I think for many of us that it's so counter-culture. It's so counter what we're used to, that the idea that I can just look at everything that I do in my life with a screen, and that screen is simply, am I loving God, am I loving people? And allowing that to be what determines what you do, where you go, what you say. Just, am I loving God, am I loving people? And you're going to find out that even as I have over the last couple of weeks, that even when you're trying to define what that looks like, something's going to happen. You're going to find yourself defining it based upon other people's view of what they think that looks like. Are you with me?
Amen.
The very way we live our lives is by defining what does loving God and loving people look like. You're going to start to think, well, what does he says it look like? What does he? And we're going to find ourselves in the same place. And so to start off, I want to hit today really on a couple ideas. The first one is this. Let go of the idea that you're going to please people. Can I just release that from you?
Amen.
Just let it go. Give it up. You're not going to make everyone happy no matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter how do you live your life. Just let it go.
Amen.
That's simplicity 101. One of my biggest struggles really has been putting God in charge of my calendar instead of people. It really has been a struggle for me. I posed a question for you last week, I think in your notes, it's number 1. But how would your life look different if God was in charge of your calendar? What would that look like? And for me, honestly, my calendar really reflects often that I am trying to go through hoops. I'm trying to do things because I think it's things that people expect of me. And probably well-meaning. As a pastor, what do people expect me to look like? What do they expect me to do? How do they expect me to respond? As a husband, what do they expect me to do? As a dad, what am I expected to do? And so you can find yourself just living your calendar just based upon what you believe everyone else wants of you, trying to meet everyone happy. And the result is you're just not going to make anybody happy. Simplify. Focus on, God, what if I gave you control of my calendar? What would it look like? What if I gave you control of my calendar? What would that look like? If you would in your notes, write this down. Another thing, would you? I cannot make everyone happy. I can't do it. I cannot make everyone happy. Release yourself of the pressure. And does that feel free already? Do you feel less pressure?
Yes.
It's just, I can't make everyone happy. Just take the pressure off. As a pastor, that means so many things for me, but take it off. I can't make everyone happy. I find that love is never defined as pleasing people. Did you know that? You look up the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13, it never says love is making everyone happy. It never says that. It does say stuff like love is patient, it's kind, it's gentle, but it never says make everyone happy. It's not there. The result of that, and I'm going to caution you, the result of living a life where you're simply saying, I'm loving God with my heart, my mind, my soul, all my strength. I'm loving God and I'm loving people. The result of living that way, and I'm just warning you, is that you will actually upset some people. It's just true. You're going to do some things in your life that people are not going to understand, they're not going to agree with, and they're going to try to tell you how you should do it different. Back when I was your age, this is how I did it. And so Jesus was often mocked, often misunderstood, and you will be too. He would heal people, and they would say, why are you doing it on the Sabbath? Are you like anti-law? Are you anti-God? Yeah, I'm anti-God. That's why I'm healing people. Like, right? Don't you sometimes feel that way when people say stuff to you?
Amen.
Like, yeah, I'm anti-God. That's why I wear a t-shirt. I don't know. But just, people are going to mock. They're going to misunderstand. You will be accused. But I'm going to calendar. Change your calendar to say, what would God want me to do? How would God schedule my day, my life, if He had charge of it? What would He do? How would He schedule it? And then the second part to that is to recognize that while we are accountable to some people, we are not accountable to every people, to all people. I know every people isn't a word, but it just kind of fit, you know? I know it doesn't work. But we're not. I see teachers right here, right? Like every people, it's not, I know. I'm sorry. But understand that, yes, there's people you're accountable to, and be accountable to them, but you don't have to give an answer to everybody that asks you. Jesus didn't. He didn't try to defend Himself to every person that He met. Actually, they would often try to get Him to do it, and He wouldn't even answer it. He would go somewhere else altogether. Speaking of this whole issue of pleasing people, 1 Thessalonians, here's what it says. 1 Thessalonians chapter, I think it's 1. I think you're right, but I can't find my notes. I hate this when this happens. Computer issues. Just take a time out. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Here's what it says. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Our purpose, Paul says, is to please God, not people. And he says this, He alone examines the motives of our hearts. So that people don't know your motives. Honor God, love people. God knows your heart. Do what you do as unto the Lord, despite what people think, say, or feel, or wonder otherwise. My family, our staff, our friends will often know when I'm trying to live a life that is geared towards trying to fulfill people's needs. They can tell. Because what I find myself doing is I find myself just doing, and I find the pressure coming on, and there's a head in some. And so when I get like a lot of pressure in my life, and I'm not doing what I should be doing with the Lord, and He's not controlling my calendar, you will find that I become short. Do not say amen, son. Short and distressed and anxious and easily razzled, and I mean that's like. Anybody else kind of get that way? And so I want to challenge you really with a second way this morning. Can I encourage you to take time to get away with the Lord? And so last week we talked about, this is different than prayer. I mean, last week we talked about finding time to pray. And I hope you did this week, prayed and fasting week. I hope you did. But finding time, you set aside your pouring times to pray and to communicate. But that's different than what I'm talking about. What I want to talk about, the second part of this whole not letting people determine your schedule, is finding times where you actually get refreshed in the Lord. Times when you actually get alone and you put some things away and some things aside, some pressures of life, some things you ought to do, need to do, whatever, and you just say, you know what, I'm just going to take some time and to be refreshed in what that looks like. And this is such a new concept for me that I've rewritten this message 3 times this week, maybe 4. Even this morning, I'm rewriting it. So I hope that maybe together we can kind of do this journey. What does that look like, refreshing, and what does the Bible say about it? So let me just go this way. As a human, you can't keep going nonstop. You can't. As a finite individual, you're going to get burned out, anxious. I have found often in talking to people that have not found moments of refreshing for their high levels of stress in life will often find addictions becoming their answer to the stress. So they're going to find some things that God is saying to you, listen, life is overwhelming. Go find a place, a moment, and let that moment, let that thing refresh you. And here's what happens. I'm going to pick on some of us real quick. Some of us, we think the easy way, the easy button is to go home. Here we go. Go home, sit back, get a glass of wine, and just relax. You can deal with that however you want to, but I'm saying this. Often, you're trying to use alcohol as a way to take away some of the pressure, but the reality is God is saying to you, I already found other ways to take care of the pressure. It just takes a little bit longer than getting a little tipsy. Amen. I know that hurt people. I know. But let's just hurt other people too. So, we do the same thing when we overeat. Because it feels good for some of us. Some of us, we feel stressed and pressured in life, and so we're like, if I just get some more food. And there's this moment, you get kind of a food buzz. Let me tell you something I do. I have a gift. I don't know if you know this or not. I have a gift from the Lord. About 9 o'clock at night, when I've had a really stressful day, I can take a glass of milk. And have you seen those Oreo packages? I'm telling you, this is God-given. I can take an Oreo package, and I can eat the whole row, no problem. And in a good, godly, spiritual day, I can eat maybe 2. But I know in my spirit, that's me controlling my calendar and people controlling my calendar, not God controlling my calendar. Because what I'm doing is I'm reacting to the pressures of life and the stresses of life through some other means than the means that God gave me to do it. Amen. Does that make sense at all? Yes. And so find whatever it is in your life for just a moment. Think about when I feel overwhelmed and life just begins to be stressful and I'm trying to please everybody and I can't, what do you go to? What's your place? And let me just share with you that often those places, sometimes it's pornography, sometimes it's gambling, sometimes it is alcoholism, but it doesn't have to be to that degree. It can be anything else. Shopping, Amazon. Did you see all the sales on Amazon? Right? And you're like, I spent $200 today, but I got great deals. But find out what your place is. What is it? And I want to encourage you to make sure that you're not just using something to be the fulfillment that God already gave you something for. So looking at the life of Jesus, and Jesus is interesting to me in so many ways, so many levels. We often talk a lot about Jesus healed all that were sick, and he did. And everyone that Jesus touched, he healed. He did. But did you know he really didn't heal everyone that he saw that was sick? I mean, you don't believe me, so let me write it down. This sounds almost anti-Pentecostal, right? I know. Mark chapter 1, verse 32, in Capernaum, it says, Jesus healed many who were sick and oppressed. And whatever, the verb is verbiage, whatever. But the next verse, Mark chapter 1, verse 35, Jesus is praying. He's getting away on a mountainside. His disciples come to him, and here's what they say, Master, everyone is looking for you. Immediately, Jesus says, oh man, I got to go. I got things to do, people to heal, people to see. I got people to touch. Does he do that? No. Here's what he does. He very politely says, there's other towns I have to go to. He leaves them all. And that's not the only place. And we hear a lot about the pool of Bethsaida, right? How many people did Jesus heal at the pool of Bethsaida? One. but it was filled with people. Can you imagine being them? This sounds almost unfair, but Jesus is like, excuse me, you. How come you're not in the water? No one will get me in. Well, you're healed. Excuse me, right? I mean, does that sound sacrilegious to you? Some of you, this is going to be tough. I'm just telling you. Let me give you some more. I find it very interesting that Jesus, God, the man God, right? He's fully God. He's on earth. And sometimes he's just fishing. Like, you're God, dude. Heal somebody. Right? Just follow me. Some of you are going to call me heretic, so just follow. Just stay with me. You never see, read the Gospels this week, would you? You never see Jesus frantically running from place to place to place, ever. You never see Jesus in any kind of sense of he's in a rush, he's got to get somewhere, he's got to go, get out of the way. You never see that. You find Jesus often getting away, taking walks around the mountainside, hanging out with his disciples, leaving places, going fishing. He was probably a youper. Right? As a matter of fact, I cleared this with my Native American friends to make sure we're okay. Jesus may even been a Native American. This is how I know. Because there's a funeral and he's 4 days late. That's some Indian time, right? I cleared it, we're okay. Y'all going, he just said that. No, it's all right. But church, just listen to me. You need to let God run your calendar, not people. People are going to try to run it for you. They'll be happy to. Listen, the laundry's going to get done. I know you don't believe that, but it will get done. The world will not fall apart if you don't clean your house right now. It's going to be okay. Single moms or moms that stay-at-home moms, and you decided to go to the grocery store to get a couple items, you don't have to make excuses for getting 2 items. Just go and sit in your car for an hour listening to music and just breathe. Amen. Right? Yes. It's okay. So listen, church, again, we're going to go through this thing for the next few weeks, but get rid of this idea of what I think people expect my life to look like, what I think the world tells me my life should look like. Just focus on what does loving God and loving people look like. Yes. And focus on that. Amen. So, again, this challenge about creating moments where you just kind of, you get away and you refresh. Let me caution you, don't make refreshing a job either. When I first moved to the Upper Peninsula again, the second time, I was here for 5 years and I left and I thought, I never really went fishing a whole lot. And so what I did is I got here and I was here for a few months, and Jeff Van Gore said, "Hey, Pastor, you want to go fishing?" I'm like, that's what they do up here to relax. That's what they do to refresh, right? So I get in this boat early in the morning and put a couple layers of clothes on. And after 30 minutes, I'm like, I'm done. We're on Lake Michigan, and it's 30 minutes an hour. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Like, how do you guys fish for 5 to 6 hours? It was longer than that. And so I had to determine within myself that although culture might define fishing as relaxing, it is not my way to relax. Or like the first time I went in a hunting blind. You sit for hours. And my hunting blind isn't that big, so I don't sit and move. I sit for hours with a little heater, looking through a little window. That's called jail. I'm just saying, like, if you don't find refreshing in a blind, get out of the blind, right? And so I've had to really change some things in my life because often what we'll try to do is we'll try to look up and say, okay, what does that everyone else do to get refreshed? And we're not wired that way. So in your notes, there's number 3 in your notes, and it just says this, to write down, take a moment to fill in the blank. I am most refreshed when and fill that in. And you can't fill it in this moment, maybe you can. But it took me a week to really work through this deal, and I'm like, God, when am I refreshed? Because I don't think about it. Is this new to anybody else besides kind of me? Like, anybody else, this is newer to you? This whole refreshing idea? A few of you. Everyone else, you spend regular times of refreshing and renewal? You guys are so spiritual. And so let me give you my top 5. And again, the idea is that we're looking to please God, not people. Love people, but not try to please people. Understanding that when we do things, not everyone's going to understand, and I'm laying that out for you. And so let me give you mine. You don't have to use them, but you need to understand context. One of my ways of refreshing is vacation. I love going to Florida. I really do. The cold weather for me is very difficult. Some of you love it, some of you crazy. I don't know. I don't like snow. It is what it is. And so for me, if I'm sitting on the beach in Florida on the Gulf Coast, I get more done in that week, and I'm not even lying. I get more done. Is the board, all the members of the board here, listen to this. I get more done in that week often than I do in about 4 months. Wow. If you want a lot done, send me to Florida. But I really do, because I'm refreshed. Like, that's how I hear from God. I walk that beach and I hear from God and I know where I'm going and I feel Him. I feel refreshed and does that make sense? Yeah. So the difficulty comes and people are like, oh, it must be nice. You get to go to Florida. It's negative 10 degrees in Michigan. Oh, right? Did I do that well? Yeah. So let me just help you with that. You're not me and I'm not you. So you got to find what works for you. So for us, we drive around cars with 170,000 miles on one of them. It's 10. No, it's not 10. It's 12 years old. The other one is 13 years old, and it'll hit 197,000 miles like today. That's how we do it. But again, be slow to judge people who do things different than you. But at the same time, listen, this is important. Do what refreshes you, despite what everyone else thinks should refresh you. Amen. Can I give you another one? For 20 years, I'm wired in such a way that if I take a nap, I really can take a power nap. I mean, that means I can be completely worn out, and I can take sleep for 10 minutes, and when I sleep for 10 minutes, I wake up and I'm, totally ready to go. It's a gift. And so for years and years, I would live with this idea that people that take naps are lazy. Yeah. 20 plus years. I'm going to fight through this thing. I couldn't think, I couldn't read, I couldn't study, but I didn't take a nap. And here's what it was. I was trying to seek the approval of humanity instead of seeking the approval of God. Amen. Now it's different. If I go to bed at 3 in the morning, wake up at 6, I'm just being stupid. Isn't that true? I'm just not being wise. I'm not loving God. I'm not loving people. I'm just not doing things right. But if I get a good night's sleep, and if I can sleep for 10 minutes and wake up, and I'm totally refreshed, ready to go, why shouldn't I do it? Amen. Does that make sense at all? Somebody help me. Give me something. But so often we live our lives just based upon what people say is right and wrong, not based upon God, how God has wired you or made you or what refreshes you. Let me give you 2 more quick and then we're going to call it done. Running refreshes me. I know that sounds weird, but I love to run. And again, I have guilt feelings for running, which is just crazy. I feel guilty for running sometimes. I could do other things. I should be doing this. I could be folding clothes. I don't fold clothes. Forget that. I could be doing other things. But often when I run, I hear from God clearly. Playing guitar refreshes me. Hiking refreshes me. So the point isn't duplicate what I do, but what refreshes you? How many will take the challenge this week and pray about, God, what is it that I need to be refreshed with? Will you do that? Will you raise your hand? Just help me. Just raise. I'll find, God, what is it that refreshes me? And then you will start putting that on your calendar. Not making life more busy, but sometimes we got to remove stuff so we can do the stuff that God is giving us to do. Let me give you, as the worship team comes out, I did the same survey with the pastors and see who maybe you know who they are. I said, you guys, this is so weird to me, kind of. What refreshes you? What refreshes you? So here's what one pastor said, and you can tell me who you think it is. Tinkering, playing with children, and finding random useless facts. If you know the individual, don't say it. Who do you think it is? Patrick. Pastor what? That's right, Pastor Patrick. Pastor Patrick, tinkering, playing with children, and random useless facts. If you've been a part of one of Pastor Patrick's life groups, you know this. Random useless facts that have no meaning. I mean, maybe they do to you. They relax you, right? So this one might be a little easier for you. Just finding creative stuff, putting together creative music, camping. Who's that? That's right, me. No. It's Pastor Scott. Yes. Listening to audiobooks, watching Netflix alone, doing crafts and cleaning. Monica. Yes. I'm a blessed man. Stop cleaning the house. That's what relaxes me. Okay. All right. I love you, babe. There you go. Finally, this is the default. Camping, small projects. Pastor Fred. So, all unique to some part. Find out what works for you and let God challenge you in a new way. Amen? Next week, we are going to talk about continuing how do you love God. We're going to try to keep it simple, keep it basic, and just rewind a little bit. Get rid of some of the stresses in life. Love God, love people. Love God, love people. This helped anybody today? Anybody? Help me. Okay. God bless you guys. Pastor Scott.
Thank you, Pastor Jason. Church, can we stand together? We'll sing this chorus together before we leave.